Okay, let's talk about that little light on your dash that can cause a big headache. Yep, the check engine light. And if you're a Subaru owner and you pull a code that says P219A, please don't panic. We are going to decode this thing together and get to the bottom of this mystery. So, you've got the code, P219A. What does that actually mean? Well, think of it less like a random error and more like a very specific clue that your car's computer is giving you. It's basically pointing us right to where we need to start looking. All right, let's get into it. This code, P219A, is the official name for our problem. It's a warning sign, plain and simple, that something is just off balance inside your engine. Our job is to figure out what that is. So at its heart, P219A is telling you there's an air-to-fuel ratio imbalance in your engine. That's the core of the whole problem. And it's really important to know, this isn't just some faulty sensor warning, it's flagging a real issue that can mess with your car's performance and even your gas mileage.
But what is an air-fuel imbalance? It sounds super technical, right? But the idea behind it is actually pretty straightforward once you break it down. So let's do that.
Honestly, the best way to think about this is like you're baking a cake. Your engine needs a super precise recipe, a perfect mix of air and fuel to run just right. This code, P219A, is just your car's way of saying, hey, the recipe is off. We've either got too much air or not enough fuel in the mix.
And you might be wondering, how does my car even know the recipe's wrong? Well, its brain, the engine control module, or ECM, is constantly watching everything. When the data it's getting back, especially from the oxygen sensors, doesn't match up with what it expects for your current engine speed, bam, it throws up that flag and turns on the check engine light. Okay, so if we know the recipe is wrong, we've got to figure out why. In our little investigation here, we've got 4 main suspects, 4 of the most common places that cause this exact code. Let's line them up and see what they have to say.
So here's our game plan. We're going to start with the electrical stuff, the harness and connector. After that, we'll check the exhaust, then the air intake, and finally, we'll look at the fuel system. Going through these steps one by one is really the key to cracking this case.
All right, we've got our list of suspects. Now it's time to get our hands dirty, do some real detective work. We're going to go through each area, hunt for clues, and pinpoint exactly what's causing that P219A code.
First up on our list is the car's communication network, the harness and connector. This is basically all the wiring that connects your oxygen sensor to the car's main computer. If that communication line is fuzzy, the computer's going to get bad info.
The problem here could be something as simple as a loose connection that just needs a good push to be secured. Or you might have something a little trickier, like a short circuit somewhere in the wire. Either way, you got to do a really thorough inspection and make sure those lines of communication are crystal clear.
Okay, moving on to suspect number 2, the exhaust system. Now, this one might seem a little weird, but a leak in your exhaust before the oxygen sensor can totally fool the system into thinking the fuel mixture is off.
So, what are we looking for? Well, any holes, any cracks, even something as simple as a loose bolt can let outside air sneak into the exhaust pipe. This extra air messes up the oxygen sensor's reading, and that's what triggers the code. The good news is, the fix is usually pretty direct. Find the leak and seal it up tight. And now for our third suspect, the air intake system. This is where the air part of our air-fuel recipe comes from. If any unmeasured air is getting into the engine, well, it throws that whole recipe completely out of whack. A lot of the time, the culprit here is a simple disconnected hose. See, the air is supposed to go through a filter and past a sensor that measures it. A loose hose lets unmeasured air sneak right past that sensor. It's like a little vacuum leak. The computer has no idea that extra air is even there. A quick look to make sure all your hoses are on tight can sometimes solve the whole problem.
So, we've checked the wiring, the exhaust, and the air intake. That leaves us with our final suspect, the fuel system itself. If the engine isn't getting the right amount of fuel, that's the other way our perfect recipe can go south.
So here, we're really looking for 2 main things, clogs or leaks. A clog in a fuel line or injector can slow down the flow, meaning the engine doesn't get enough fuel. A leak, well, that means fuel is escaping before it even gets where it needs to go. Either way, the engine is starved for fuel, and that recipe is ruined.
We've gone through all our suspects. We've looked at the evidence. So what's the final verdict? Let's wrap up our findings and close the case on this one.
The absolute key to solving this thing is just to be systematic. This is your 4-point checklist. Always, always start with the easy visual stuff. Look for loose hoses, make sure electrical plugs are snug, before you move on to the more involved checks on the exhaust and fuel systems.
And here's a really crucial piece of advice. While it's awesome to understand what might be going on with your car, sometimes it's really best to let a professional mechanic handle the final diagnosis and the repair. They have all the specialized tools and, more importantly, the experience to nail down the exact problem safely and get you back on the road.
So there you have it. That check engine light isn't so mysterious anymore, is it? Now you actually understand what P219A means, you know the likely places the problem might be hiding, and you have a logical way to think through it. You're now equipped with the knowledge to either look into it yourself or, at the very least, have a much smarter conversation with your mechanic. The mystery is in your hands.